All right, finally to bake this thing, we just need to drop in hit tab and then type in simple baker. And now what we're going to do is, here's our game res. We would go ahead and make this visible. This is our game res with our UVs. And then here's our simple baker. So we're going to plug in our low res into the left side and then our high res into this right side. And then make sure the simple baker node is selected and visible. And let's talk about some of these options. Resolution is pretty obvious. This is what you're going to use to determine the size of your output texture. You can make this non-square if you want to. You just got to change these values, or you can use the drop down to change it to different presets. Your base path is where your textures are going to be saved. You can't see it now, but if I drop this down, it's being saved to a specific location. So whatever that specific location is basically this $hip file. This is where your hip file is saved. So for example, like I showed you, my file is saved in E Houdini hard surface test assets Houdini scope 001 hip and LC limited commercial because we're using the indie version. So that's where that hip file is saved. So within that folder is going to be, they're going to create a render folder, and they're going to name it $hip name, which is basically the name of our scene file, which is Houdini scope 001 underscore $channel, which is the name of the channel down here. So right now by default we have the base color normal and AO checked on, and then .targa. You can change any of this that you want. For example, if you wanted to save out a PNG, just get rid of target, type in PNG. If you want to see more image types that it can save, just click on the little arrow here, and then you can choose this drop down, and you can save it as any one of these things that you want to. I'm going to go ahead and leave the defaults alone. I think that'll work fine. The channels themselves are pretty self-explanatory as well. Just check on the ones you want to bake, and if you want to change the name, you can change it here. I think the vertex color, the normal map, the ambient occlusion map will be fine, but if you want to, you can also bake out the roughness, metallic world, curvature, thickness, position, and height. And you can also add your own custom channels if you wanted to say bake velocity. If we go up here to the advanced tab, you're going to see use MIC-T tangent spaces checked on. You're going to want to have this checked on for Unity and Unreal. And then you can choose whether or not to flip this normal Y, the green channel of your normal map, basically DirectX or OpenGL. You can load in a cage mesh if you'd like right here. This is where you can determine the border padding as far as how much your textures are going to bleed around your UV shells. You can raise and lower your baking samples for smoother aliasing along the edges. And you can also adjust the ray bias and the ray distance values in order to get a nice clean bake. So if you're ready to go, scroll all the way back up and you're going to see a little render button up here. Go ahead and hit render. Alrighty, so that's going ahead and finish, and you can see we've updated this object right here. And there's one more thing I got to talk about, this material tab over here. By default, what the baker does is plug in your AO map as the color and then apply your surface normal. Also in the material channel over here, you can change the base color. It chooses like a nice medium gray. You can change the roughness. If you crank this down, it'll make it very, very shiny in your viewport. And then if you crank this up, it'll make it rough, so it dials in that value. And it's, again, it's telling you the diffuse map is the AO map, so you can change that if you'd like. If we go back here, we can say, you know what, for the material, I want this to be base color. And there you go. Now you have your base color plugged in, but let's go ahead and keep that AO. And in this case, our base color was our vertex color from ZBrush, also called the poly paint. So let me go ahead and open up the folder. So again, we're going to go back to that hard surface test assets. You're going to see it made a render folder in there, and then we have our 3 targas in there, AO, base color, normal, whatever we told it to bake, and we're good to go. Nice clean bake, nice low res geometry. And of course, because we have this node graph all set up, we can put arbitrary objects through here all day, even getting as fancy as making this its own compact Houdini digital asset with exposed parameters to the end user. A lot of really cool stuff you can do with this. And just one more thing, underneath this baker, if you choose this little checkbox, export FBX, it will go ahead and export this GameRes FBX along with your textures into the same root directory. Or if you don't, you can change what directory that goes into.